Malonere and welcome to Beyond the Silence podcast.
Join me, Lovey,
Be Mama,
and Miliane on a journey through heartfelt conversations as we uplift our communities and pave the way through healing and growth.
Are you ready to dive deep into topics that we've been conditioned to avoid?
Join us as we shatter the silence and embrace the uncomfortable.
But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Yugara people in which the land that we are recording on today always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
All right, guys, and welcome to our first podcast show. We're just going to give a little bit about ourselves before we start and get into our topic. Miliane, if you want to just share a little bit about yourself and who you are, where you're from, and we'll go from there.
So my name is Miliane. I was born in Namuka Ha'apai, raised here in Australia since I was like 5 or 6 years old. Grew up in Sydney, Melbourne, and now I've been residing in Brisbane for probably like 10, 15 years. I've been a human resources manager for 8 years. We've just opened up a project that we feel like it's a calling called Mawhana Media. And I'm just really excited to be here today. Talking about taboo topics is really out of some people's comfort zone. It's definitely out of my comfort zone. It's nice to know that there is a safe space with you girls to be able to share that. That's a little bit about me.
And you, Lovey, what about you?
So my name is Lovey. I'm a mum of 3 girls. I'm from Brisbane. I moved here about 6 or 7 years ago. Moved from Sydney, lived up north in a place called Tully. My dad was a banana farmer up there. I'm studying youth work and I'm also currently working youth work. But before that, I was hairdressing, did it for many years, worked with so many beautiful women and shared a lot of stories with women that have sat in my chair. I guess that gave me that was my passion while doing hair, was that connection with people and hearing other people's stories and just knowing that you're not alone. And I guess that's what's brought me here today on this podcast and how we created this space, just to have a safe space for people to talk about things that they don't generally talk to others about, and know that this is a safe space for them.
And I'm Lama. I am half Tongan, half Fijian. My dad was a miner, so we grew up in the country for my childhood. So we were raised in Mount Isa. Then we lived a bit in Sydney, moved to Brisbane, settled in Brisbane. I work as a hairstylist, specialising in braids. Yeah, and I've been doing that now for 6 years, and that job or career has led me to meeting you guys. And I've always had a passion for people, passion for serving, passion for helping others. And when you work in the hair industry, you get to hear a lot of people's stories and a lot of what people are going through. And that kind of birthed this podcast of knowing that like a lot of people are going through the same stuff, they're just going through it silently. So that's a little bit about me. I also work, a lot of people don't know, but I actually have a second job as well. I work as a support advocate worker over at Micro Projects during the afternoons, and that's also a really good job because it is just outreaching and helping the homeless and that. So I am very lucky, very blessed, and just very grateful to take this journey with you girls and see where it's going to head. Today's topic is actually called Breaking Tapu. And before we dive into it, and we're going to tell our stories and situations that we've been through, I want us to just quickly, maybe like 30 seconds, just say like what your understanding of Tapu is and what you think it means to you. So we'll start with Lovey.
So breaking Tapu to me is something that we're taught that you're not allowed to speak on, that it has a lot of shame to it. That's my thoughts on breaking Tapu. I just see shame, like that's something that's really huge on what I feel that Tapu means.
I think it's shame, but also not having the tools to know how to navigate a conversation that is Tapu.
That's it. I agree with both of you guys on the shame and being uncomfortable. I also think like it's Tapu, of course, is like forbidden, and so a lot of like that's why we named our podcast Beyond the Silence, is ultimately to bring light to those topics and things that are hidden, that like, and I feel like we're also very sensitive these days, like because a lot of the times we can't talk about it because we're afraid of what other people are going to think, what other people are going to say, what other people are going to judge you for. Lovey, do you have the definition of Tapu before we get into our story?
The definition of Tapu is a social or religious custom prohibiting or restricting a particular practice or forbidding association with a particular person, place or thing. Its origin was in the late 18th century from Tonga Tapu, set apart, forbidden, introduced into the English by Captain Cook.
And that's cool because the English word is taboo,
Yeah.
but it derived from tapu, which is a Tongan word. So it goes to show how far it goes in our roots, because it's from our culture, like it's from our country. Like that word taboo came from us, from our Tongan people. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I don't know who wants to start, but we want to just share a story that we've been through that you felt like it was tapu and what you went through. So
I think I'll start.
Yeah.
I don't mind starting, but I just wanted to make a quick disclaimer before we dive into these topics about breaking tapu. Is the topics we'll be talking about are sexual abuse, religion, and adoption. So if this is something that you may feel triggered by, and we will have links on our bio for you to access if you do need to seek professional help. I'll get into breaking tapu and my first experience on when I experienced breaking tapu, or a time in my life where I felt that I wasn't allowed to speak on something and the shame behind it. Yeah, it was back when I think I would have been about maybe 7 or 8. It was my grandfather's funeral, actually, my mum's dad's funeral, and we were heading to his burial, and we were in the car, in the van. All my cousins, my siblings were in the van driving to his burial, and there was a man that was in the church who was seeking a lift from our family to get to the funeral, to the burial. And so he was sitting in the back with us and all us kids, and that was my experience of being molested. It was broad daylight, and the reason why I'm bringing it to light is because this could happen to anybody, especially the setting in which it happened. It was so innocent, like the setting. We were driving, and I was sitting next to him, and I was being molested in the backseat, and like my auntie and uncle were driving. There was a whole heap of kids of us in the back. Like, so this is just the reason I share the setting is because to make people aware that this could happen to anyone's child. Like, it's not, you don't have to be in a nightclub or in a room with the perpetrator. You can be in an open setting. And yeah, so I experienced being molested in the back seat of my auntie and uncle's vehicle in their van. And at the time, I didn't know what was happening. I feel like you go into a flight or fight mode, and mine was flight. I literally just froze. I knew that what he was doing was wrong, but I also couldn't move. Had I been taught about like safety of like people touching you, and if I was more aware of like the tools and things to teach that was taught to me by my parents about your private parts and that, I think I would have spoke out. But because I had no idea what was happening, I just sat there, and it was just a experience that changed me forever.
Did anyone see, did anyone witness it, or was it done?
So it was, I don't think so, but after the burial and that, we all went back to the house, and everyone came and had tea and coffee, and all of us cousins were sitting, and I did speak out to my all my cousins and that, and I told them what had happened, and they were like, you need to go tell someone. And then one of my sisters also experienced it, because when it happened, I moved to the back. Like, I jumped to the back seat because we went and put petrol in the car, and then my sister sat next to him, and then it happened to her. So, and we didn't realize that, like, it's so weird because we spoke about it when it happened, and then we told the, like, older parents and stuff, and then it was just like, don't talk about it, that's it. Like, there was nothing that happened after it. Like, it was kind of just swept under the carpet. And then for us, for me growing up, it was just like, even though I spoke out about it and told the older people, nothing had been done. And then going on later on, a few years later, my older brother ended up telling me that he actually was caught like sexually abusing his own grandkids, like his...
That same man?
Yeah, that same man. Wow. And so for me, it was like, okay, so now that I'm an adult and speaking about it, how many other people did he touch?
Yeah.
And because he was a widow, he had... his wife had passed away. A lot of the church had reached out and helped him. Like, he would have dinner at everyone's houses. And for me, it was like, if I'm that one person that spoke out, how many other were suffering in silence? And I guess that was my experience of something Tapu, but also something that I'm really passionate about teaching my children about their private parts and being safe, and also teaching them that predators don't look like scary people, homeless people. They're usually the ones that are dressed like, look like the nice guy, look like the person that has a higher, calling in the church, or like someone that looks like a normal person. And I've always said to my daughter, even like at school and stuff with teachers, and I say, don't always think that people that are in a higher ranking or something that you need to like question. You need to question everyone, not just people that are, how do you explain it? Yeah. You question everyone and anyone. It doesn't matter what ranking they hold. And so she's really aware of that, and she's very... Sometimes I feel like maybe I've raised her too outspoken, because she'll question everyone and question everything about what you like. Oh, okay, so why do I have to do that? And like, and I love that about her.
And it's so good that like you took that experience and you changed it for your next generation, for your kids. But I just want to ask, like, did that guy ever like? Did anyone like? Did he ever admit it? Like, was he ever?
No.
Was there any accountability on his end for any of this?
No.
So to this day, he still hasn't been confronted. He hasn't.
No, he actually died, and I guess for me, I know how as bad as it may sound, but the day he died, and I think I was maybe in my younger years, when I found out he died, that's when I was at peace.
Yeah. I was going to ask that. Did you get closure from... Yeah,
that was my closure, is the day he passed. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But, and I also, for me, I guess it was, I hope by speaking out about it, it would bring those people that if he did touch forward and to speak about it. Because as much as we can hold on to things and not shed light to it, it can also eat us away as well. So I'm hoping that by sharing my story, it will give other people, boys or girls, the courage to speak on it and heal. Yeah.
Have you spoken since to your family about the incident and why they didn't support you at that time?
That's a good question, actually, because I did speak about it maybe about a year or two ago to my mum, and she was really triggered about it. She actually went off. Like, she was just... And I mean, I'm not saying this in a way to make her look... I don't want to say this, but this is was just my experience. And I feel like she brought up things that happened to her, and this I didn't know that about her, and so she's also going through her own things that we don't know about. So I guess it was more, her reaction was just like, why are you bringing it up? It happened and it's done.
Dismissive.
Just really dismissive. But I didn't, for a while I kind of was angry at her reaction, but then I also had to look at what was her story and what did she go through, and then slowly finding out that she experienced things that and she hasn't fully came out about it, but that's okay because that's for her and that's her timing.
That's
but
her way of dealing with
it.
it.
And because me and my sister brought it up at the same time, and it's interesting because we both experienced similar things with the same person, but we both had different outlooks on it. So I was very closed off when it happened to me, whereas she kind of self-destructed and she went the opposite way. And we only spoke about it recently in our adult years when we spoke to my mum. Me and her sat down and unpacked it as adults, and it was really interesting to hear how when the same thing can happen to a different person, but it changes them in different ways. And her way was like self-sabotage, like just a lot of things that, I mean, that's her story to tell, but I guess it's more interesting to see how two different approaches on how we dealt with it. And I was very empathetic towards her, and I really felt for her because she really struggled with it growing up. And I guess now that we are adults and we're able to share how we were able to overcome those challenges we faced, we are able to heal as a family and together.
And I know that you were just saying before about teaching your girls and teaching them like signs and being aware of their body and protecting their body and all of that, and like that's such, like I commend you on that, because that's a topic that it's very hard for us as like islanders, even our parents, like to teach us that kind of like
language,
and language, like that really is a double language, because we don't get taught, like that's literally, I remember, like I was never taught anything of that, like nothing about that. I found out through like the girls, my older cousins, when the girls would talk about it. So for you to be able to bring that forth to your girls, I just wanted to ask, like, is there like anything that you would advise like parents, because a lot of parents will be watching this, on how you made it comfortable for you to have those conversations in that language with your daughters?
Giving the correct terms for your private parts, not calling it by like your wee-wee, or like calling it a vagina, calling it a penis. It's interesting when I find my kids talk about it, other kids laugh at them when they say the correct term, and they're like giggling on the side, but my kids look at them like it's a vagina, it's a penis, like, and it's just normalizing that as a language of this is the correct term of each body part, and then also teaching them what's safe touching. This isn't safe touching. If someone makes you feel uncomfortable, you can say no. If someone asks for a kiss, you don't have to kiss them. And also giving your kids permission and consent for like their body and things that make them feel uncomfortable. I think my biggest thing is, and I know this a lot with the Polynesian culture, is they're very affectionate and like, oh, come Uma, like that kind. And my kids, they're very used to being able to say no. And so it can be uncomfortable for others who want to like embrace them, and they're just like, because they just don't. I've always given them that option. And even when I ask them, can I have a kiss? And if they say no, I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, I don't try and bribe them or like tell them, give mommy a kiss now. Like, that's just not it, because they have a right to refuse it. And even when they want to hug me or like kiss me, sometimes I'm like, I just need space. Like, I also mimic that because I don't want them to feel, like they can do that to me as well. It's more like, just teaching your kids about their private parts and making it a normal conversation. But it was uncomfortable for me at the beginning when I started to teach them, because I wasn't taught that. So I had to unlearn as I was teaching them, and now it's just like second language to my kids. So yeah.
Awesome, thanks sis. And we're going to jump into our next story. Miliane, we're so excited to hear your story.
A disclaimer, I love my family is beautiful, and I'm speaking this purely from my own experience. I was born in Tonga Hapai. I was adopted into the Fifita family, which is the family that I'm with now. And so when I was adopted, my adopted family lived here in Sydney, Australia. And so I was born in Tonga, but they were trying to migrate me and move me here to Sydney. But there were just a few challenges that they had to go through. My biological mum, who, by the way, I call them my mum and dad. So my adopted parents, I just say they're my parents, because I don't really know my biological parents. So to me, they are strangers, and they are my birth people. That sounds so bad. That's how I see the but in terms of who I call my mum and dad and my mother and father, I would say it's my adopted parents.
Yes.
So they were currently living here in Sydney, Australia, and I was still in Tonga, and there were a few challenges along the way. My mother, my adopted mother, went through cancer, and so she had passed before she was able to process my final adoption papers to come through. A year later, my adopted father worked closely with the guardian that was taking care of me in Tonga to finally process my papers. And so just when that happened, he also passed a year apart. So both of my adopted parents had passed. So by the time I finally migrated here to Australia, both parents had passed. And so my oldest sister in my adopted family raised me. And so she had to take on a 5 or 6 year old at 25. And so I was basically raised by my oldest sister, who in my eyes, like, she's also a mother figure to me. Like, she's embodied that. I've grown up not knowing what it feels like to have that mother-father like love. My taboo topic is that my adopted family have always made it clear, yes, you're adopted, this is where you've come from, this is the background story. Like, they've always been open and honest with it, but there hasn't been a space to unpack, like, how do you feel about it? Do you want to know more about your history? Like, it was very much just surface level. Yes, you're adopted. These are your parents, your birth parents. But this is us now, and this is the opportunities that we like. It was very much like that. And so I've gone through my upbringing as like, oh yeah, whatever. Like, who cares about your feeling? Shove it to the side. And I didn't realize that it was impacting me subconsciously until I got into my teenage adult life, when I really struggled with like my identity. Like, I was born in Tonga, but I was raised here in Australia. I wasn't Tongan enough, and I wasn't Aussie enough. So I was like, what the frick's going on? It was a topic that was never discussed, only because they didn't know, they've never had an adopted child in their family. So how, I was kind of just brought in, and then mum and dad left, and then they were like, oh, what do we do with this person, Because I had such an identity crisis, I was a rebel. And so I would go against the grain. I felt like I wasn't loved. That was a massive thing. So the way that I felt was like I was an outsider, and that I wasn't loved. And so I would just do everything under the sun to go against what everybody was saying. If they say go right, I'll go left. And so it wasn't until I unpacked it later on that I realized, my family actually really loved me. They did provide me a safe space to grow up, and they really protected me. But because I was struggling with that identity, I didn't know how to navigate my life. And so had it been a topic that was discussed, I feel like I could have navigated it a little bit easier without suffering as much. I did try to bring it up one time with my
I was gonna ask
with
you
my
that.
family, and similar reaction to Lovey. It was very much like defensive, and so because that happened, I shut off again. My family didn't know how to speak about it. I can completely understand that they too were navigating through it. My family is now more open to speaking about it, and I think it's also my approach. So when I approach it, it's very much like, hey, I acknowledge how you think and feel and what you would have experienced. I'm purely asking from a space of I also want to find healing. And I remember the first time I brought it up, I was defensive. I was like, why didn't you tell me about it? And they were like, whoa. So I just realized that, the way that you approach it as well makes a massive difference. And acknowledging is massive. So acknowledging that, yes, I can see that this is how you would have thought and felt. As soon as you acknowledge someone's feelings, they're a little bit more open to the conversation.
Love that. I actually love what you just said about it. When you acknowledge the other person and their feelings, they're more open to the conversation.
During my teenage and early adult life, I was like in a space of like resentment. I was angry, like I was a real angry little gal. I then learned the word compassion. They could only support you with whatever tools that they had. So once I learned that, I was like, okay, I get it.
How is this coming out of it now have helped with your identity? Is there still a confusion around it, or do you feel like you're a lot more confident in who you are?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely confident in who I am. And I think a lot of healing came from it, purely from having a conversation with my family. Not only that, I think walking in a spiritual path also helped with my identity, because who cares about your identity when you have Christ? Like, that's your identity, that's your true identity. So I was like, okay, humble myself. I'm still healing, not fully healed. But having that conversation was a massive step towards healing. That was
nice. I love that.
Having that taboo conversation.
I just wanted to share, because like growing up, we had cousins that were adopted, and like it's good to hear your perspective on how it was growing up as an adopted child, because I never looked at it that way when I was growing up with my cousins that were adopted, and they were treated differently. Like, I know every family dynamic's different, but from what I've seen, some of my cousins were treated differently to the other kids that were adopted into their family. And so I guess for me, it's just educating myself on how you grew up and being more mindful of someone that is adopted, so I could actually open that conversation with cousins that I have about, and giving them that safe space to be able to talk freely on how they feel. So I think that's a great thing that you shed light to for people that have adopted cousins or family members, to just be more mindful on how they're feeling, and actually open conversations for them to have that healing for them as well. And
you saying that is already healing me as well. My environment I was brought up in a very safe home and a great environment. It had, the only thing that I was craving was a conversation and an acknowledgement of how you're thinking and feeling, because as an adopted person, you naturally already feel out of place, regardless if you've had a safe home. Having someone being like, hey, I see you, I acknowledge you, like, already healing.
Is there anything that you would give advice to your younger self, or anyone that's listening that might be going through it currently right now? Is there something that you would encourage them with, or any tool or anything you would give them to?
You're definitely not alone, and that whatever glasses that you're wearing at the moment, I wear glasses, by the way, but whatever glasses that you're wearing at the moment, and it's very dark, you can easily take them off and put on a different lens, because what you focus on is what you get. I was focusing on what I didn't have during that time. With my shades of glasses was like real dark and heavy, and it wasn't until I switched focus then the suffering eased, or at least I was able to navigate it through a little bit easier.
I love changing your lens in life, because that's all that it really is. As soon as you switch your perspective on something and you start seeing things from the positive side, or from like what you have instead of what you don't have, then you start seeing, like, you start to become content with what you're going through.
If you guys heard of Tony Robbins,
yes,
absolutely love Tony Robbins. He changed a lot of my perspective. But he ran this activity. If it's okay, I'll run it with you guys really quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, it only takes like 5 seconds. So I get quickly look around the room. I want you to find something that is red. Find something that's red. Red, 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 red. Ready? All right, close your eyes. I want you to list everything that is blue. Call it out. All right, open your eyes. Can you see everything that's blue? Cool. Can you now see things that are blue?
Yes.
Yeah, what is it? Water bottle, jeans, everywhere.
Sure.
Cool. So the purpose of it is what you focus on is what you get. Right. So I asked you to find something that was red, close your eyes. I asked you to find something blue. You couldn't see anything that was blue. So that was, when he ran that activity, I was like, that just switched my focus so quickly.
That's so good. Yeah.
So Tony Robbins, shout out to you.
That's so
Plug you
good.
in.
Oh, thank you, Milena, for sharing your story and bringing light to adoption, because I know that is a heavy topic in our culture. A lot of people, like, adoption is literally like buying a pair of shoes. Like, we give children away like it's nothing. And as much as, you know, a lot of the times that in our culture we'll give kids for like couples that are like can't have children and all of that, and which is like, we think it's very noble and very like, we want to like bless them with a child to raise for themselves. We actually neglect, or we forget about the actual child that's being raised and their feelings. So we honor you and thank you for sharing your story, sis. Yeah.
I'm so proud.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. And I love that because I have adopted siblings. So for me to even open my eyes to be like, damn, I need to make sure that they're okay and check up on their feelings and emotions, because to be honest, I don't even know if they know they're adopted, my little sister. But yeah.
Well, that's a conversation.
Surprise!
Surprise!
Lama will share her breaking Tapu experience and how it shows up for her. And
I think I'll just start from my upbringing. So I was born and raised in Australia. I said before that my dad's Tongan. My dad's Fijian, my mum's Tongan. But I grew heavily on my Tongan side. My dad, when he came from Fiji, when him and my mum got married and they moved here, my dad kind of cut ties with his Fijian side and his Fijian family. So we grew up knowing next to nothing about our culture. And we grew up in like the country towns, moved here. And when we moved to Brisbane, I was in grade 7, I think. I just started high school, I'm pretty sure. And I had started my journey with God. But I was at my uncle's church where it's a small Tongan community church down in Southside. And I grew up in, how do I explain it? I was very sheltered growing up. At the same time, my parents were going through their divorce, lifestyles at home was up and down. My dad was an alcoholic at the time. So my mum was really in church, and we grew up in Mount Isa. We grew up heavily in the SDA church. I didn't actually start my journey with God until around high school, and that's when I ultimately gave my life to God. And I started everything that a Christian, good Christian, strong Christian girl does. I was church youth leader. I was Sunday school teacher. I've been youth in the worship leader, worship, everything under the sun I've done and I've been. And I was literally like, me and God, I was like, I don't know how to explain it, but I had such a pure love for God at such a young age. Like I was going to sleep reading my word, waking up reading my word. Like it was even to the point as I grew up in high school that I started like counseling people in relationships. Mind you, I've never dated in my life, but I was literally like counseling them like all I know is my relationship with Jesus. So if it doesn't look like this, then leave. Like, you know, but I used to Bible bash. Like if you were to sit and if you guys were to sit and pour out your problems, and I was like, that's the devil. Like I was very like, that's the spirit in you. Get rid of that. So I was really, and it just was what I was brought up around, and it was my language was always church. My conversation was always church. My everything like, and I didn't realize that it affected the people closest to me. Like it really, my commitment to church was next level. Like I would skip family things to go to church. Like my commitment to church was my be all end all. And then as I got older, life started happening, and you know, you leave high school, you have to find a job, find a career. I wasn't working at the time, I was trying to study. And then just a lot of things in the church was happening, and a lot of dramas that was going on, and it was affecting myself and someone else that is to this day still very close to me. And I started seeing things that made me question, and started to just, what's the word, like they were saying things or preaching things or teaching things that wasn't being aligned with what they were doing, like inconsistency in what they were. And it's not to judge on people or to look down on people, because coming out of it now, having understanding for people going through what they're going through, and at that time that's what they were going through. But I started doubting a lot of my belief and started doubting who I was. But it was more in the sense of like, is this all? Like, is this all that there is to church? Is this all that there is to God? Is this all that there is to life? And I got really to the point where I hadn't even worked. I remember my brother called me because he was working up north in Bowen, and he was like, sis, if you want, I can get you on a job up here. And I think I got to a place where I became so desperate for just to get out. I was questioning leaders. I was questioning people's like their word. I was questioning what people's like actions were, because it was so inconsistent that it made me feel like I was the bad person, because, you know, even certain things that I was, the blame was put on me. And for me, I was just like, okay, you know what? Maybe I need to just do something else. And so when my brother called and he was up north and he was like, do you want to come? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to come and I'll just work. Like, I really just want to get out of this place, because nothing is moving. My life wasn't moving at the time. So I booked a ticket up to Bowen, and that started I think I was there for like 4 years, I think. And I went, I turned into a wild card, because I did everything and anything. Like, when I tell you, like, no plans at all. Because my head was like, if I'm going to be in Brisbane, I'm all for God. But if I'm going to be out there and think, I'm going to go and just do it. Like, I was really on that F the world buzz. Like, mind you, when I grew up in church, we made like this vow thing that we weren't going to date until we were 21, right? Because my auntie really instilled that into like the virtuous woman, and she really instilled of like, you know, when you are 21, you're more mature, you're wiser, your body's more developed, and da-da-da. So she really thinks, so I held on to that. Even when I was like talking to people, like, oh, waiting till I'm 21. And then, yeah, once I hit 21, it was like, and then I was like, okay. So then I was kind of like, okay, so this is the timeline of what life is meant to be happening, isn't happening. So my brother called, and when he called, I was like, yep, let's go. So I gapped it over up north to Bowen, and I just went on this like rampage. I'm pretty sure, like, it was like, I remember the first time even like drinking alcohol, and I was just like, I just felt so wrong. Like, I just felt like I shouldn't be doing this. Like, I'm going to hell. And like, I just like it was that uncomfortable because of what I believed and what I held so close to my heart. And it was funny because it led down to things that, you know, that I know that to this day, a lot of people will be like, damn, like, you know, Mama's really, like, she really, like, everyone was really shocked. I think that was the biggest thing coming back and people finding out, like, you know, the whole talk of, like, she's backslidden. Oh my gosh, she's backslidden. Like, she's back in the world. Like she's in the world, like, da-da-da. So even having all that judgment and that, I was so fearful. Like, I was so fearful. And I was drinking and I was partying and I was going out. And to the point where my mom was like, she, like, pretty much ripped me off because she was like, girl, what is wrong with you? Like, get back to church. Like, you need to go back to church. But I was really on, like, what the hell is church going to do? Like, you know? So I was on my F the world buzz. And then when it was funny because going through all of that, somehow deep inside me, I still stay connected with God, because there were times, I remember the first time when I got in a serious relationship, and I, for some reason, like, everything in my life at that point, materialistic wise, was going so well. Like just work was great. I was in a, like, serious relationship for the first time. I, like, you know, was doing my own thing. I was Miss Independent. I was at rock bottom. Like, I was to the point where I became suicidal. And I was like, I was sitting in my car. I remember one time I was sitting in my car that night, sitting in my car, because where Bowen is, it leads to, like, the end of one of the main roads leads to the beachfront. And I drove and I parked up to the beachfront and I just sat there and I was like, it was such an empty, hollow, I don't even know how dark it was. And I was sitting there and I was, like, crying, and I was like, just to God, and I was like, if you're really up there, like, you need to fix this. Like, I'm so sorry, but, like, this is not, I don't know, even understand how I can have all of this going for me right now in life, but yet I feel so empty and so hollow. And I'm like, if you have my back, help me. And he ended up, like, my mom ended up coming, and my mom sat in a car. Bless my mom, I love her to bits. And, you know, the Tonga mentality was like, it was like me crying my eyeballs out, and my mom was just like, that's why you need to go to church. That's why you need Jesus. That's why I already told you. That's why da-da-da-da. And for me to be lost, like, oh, I don't want to hear this. Like, I already know, like, don't tell me. Like, in my head, like, I was like, but my mouth was shut because I didn't want to get backhanded. But my mouth was shut, but my mind was just, like, my body was fuming. Yeah. Like, I was just fuming because I was like, this is not what I need to hear right now in this moment. Like, because I was sitting in that car and really I wanted to just drive that car off the cliff. Like, really just wanted to just bang off the cliff. And then life did its thing, and somehow I ended up back in Brisbane, moving back to Brisbane. And when I moved back to Brisbane, I sat down with a really good friend of mine and had the same conversation. And I was like, I went back to my old church, and I was in a state of desperation, because when you go through life and you're like, I need more. Like, there must be more to life. Yeah. I need something. So when I went to what I thought was like the church, because, you know, the church is for the broken, and I went back into the building and I cried even more sitting in the church, because nothing had changed. Everything was the same songs, the same program. I could literally, like, from sitting from the back, know exactly what's going to be next, or what's the next program on the list. And I was so broken and so desperate. I broke down crying, but the crying wasn't for me this time. The crying was for the church. And I broke down and I was like, how is this still the same when I left and nothing has grown? Like, I am so desperate for you, God, right now, that I'm, like, in this brokenness, in this place of, like, needing, like, life, right? I needed life, and it was just stale. And that ultimately was my decision of, okay, I'm gonna walk away and I'm just gonna give it to you, let it go. And that ultimately led to me meeting up with one of my good friends, and she was like, how are you? She checked up on me, and it was just the listening ear that she had for me that I broke down crying. And I ended up going to another church, and it was such a new experience, because it was a white church. And just seeing the way that they really taught you how to deal with your inner issues, and how to deal with the things that you were going through, because you know when you're in a dark place and you're really stuck, you kind of like, you just don't know how to get out. Like you kind of, in a way, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like you can see that, okay, this is not where I'm supposed to be, but I just don't know what to do or how to get through this. Like, you know, and you know how you were saying, like, you would advise like to push through. I was in that place where I was like, what do I do? Like, what is it that, what does that look like for me? And it was interesting because I ended up getting my job at Specific Cuts. That's another crazy story. Like, that was a God ordained, like literally that, getting into that shop, I actually had a few other barbershops lined up to interview, and I sat down with Nick, and me and Nick had a conversation, and it was funny because all the teachings and everything that I had learned from church prior to that, and everything about leadership and everything, I saw that in Nick, even though he didn't, at the time he didn't go to church. So I just saw a leader, and I saw a mentor. And I'm a big believer that everything starts from the leader and the head. Your family, your relationship, your spiritual life, everything, it's from the head. So if even your work life, like if you've got an unhealthy, toxic work environment, question the leaders. What is that they're actually bringing down to everyone else? You know, that's how I think. Well, that's how I see it. So when I saw Nick and the way he spoke, and he spoke with such authority, and he spoke with such, just having everything established for his business, and he had a vision for his business. He had all of this, compared to a lot of the other interviews where I kind of questioned, because they were like, oh yeah, if you come on board, we can do this. And for me, I was kind of like, I'm not the leader, you're the leader, so you should take charge. And so when me and Nick sat down, and I was like, okay, like if you, like, I'm down, I'm keen, I want to get started. And then he was like, yep, we can go through it. So that was in 2018, 19. And then I've been there ever since. And it's funny because I went from like, and even when I started at Specific Cuts, I was really like, nah, I don't want anything to do with God. I don't want not anything to do with God, but more anything to do with the church. I'm done. Like I'm done with ministry. I'm done with helping people, serving people. Lo and behold, I get put into this position as a hairstylist, and my job literally every day is to deal with people, different people from different walks of life. And for me, having them sit in my chair, pour out their heart, and having a safe space, like, you know, we always talk about safe space, and I didn't really understand it until people would literally be like, Lama, I literally come back because of the chats. Like, I come back because I enjoy talking to you, or I come back, Lama, because there's just something here when I sit in this chair. And for me was my, like, damn, like, God, you're really using me outside of the church, and you're using me outside of what I thought I had to be in the church to be used, but understanding that I can be used outside. And that's the whole purpose. Like, for me, my view on church is that's your training ground to build, but your work and your ministry is out in the world. And so for me, it's funny because it's like, I was actually afraid to share the story, because my heart is not to bash on the church, and my heart is not to put down the church. I feel like I've gone to a place where everyone's journeys take their own different, like everyone's on a different journey. And for me, my journey was outside of the church. And I see now, looking back into it, that it's like, okay, my life now has flourished 1,000 times. Like I'm incredibly grateful that I get to meet people that, I've met people in the barbershop. Like, my clientele go from people who I've had people check themselves out of the mental hospital to come get their hairs done. I get porn stars that adult film creators that sit in my chair. I get pastors, I get youth workers, I get, like, the variety of people. That has opened my perspective on life, and really just like, damn, there's more to it than just the four walls and the program of church. And that's what I was grateful for in my journey. And it's for me, that's taboo in itself to say all of that. It's taboo because it's like, man, Lama, you're going to lead people astray. You're going to lead people to do the wrong thing. And it's like, no, that's not my heart leave them, but that's my journey. That's what life has brought me to the point where even to this day, my relationship with God will always be first through everything and anything. And for me to trust him that he will lead me to the right places. He will close the doors that are not meant to be for me, and he'll open the doors that were meant to be for me. Even sitting here with you girls, that like, you guys know how many times I've tried to do a podcast with other people as well, and it's finally come to fruition. That's why I was like, I just let it be, like, you know, let God be God. And I don't know if that's really like, that's going too deep or anything, but yeah, so that's my heart and my taboo thing, because it was a journey for me to find myself outside of the church. And that was such a struggle for me, and even to this day, still learning, still going through my own healing on stuff as well, but being more open to communicate with and have conversations. That's why I'm so grateful, because I'm like, having you girls that have the same heart of like, I want to be free to talk about these issues. Like, for me, I'll talk about anything and everything, you know, even to the point where like my sister and that, like my family know, like they were just like, oh, just be careful when you say it, just be careful. I'm really like, I couldn't care less what other people say, what other people will judge, because for me, everyone is broken. Everyone has something in their closet. If you're already healed and whole, then good for you, you won't need this. But I know deep down that there is something that everyone's going through. This is a generation that's just getting worse and worse. Suicide, depression, anxiety, all of that is just getting to a place. But yet we're coming to a place where we've got to cover it. We've got to look good. We've got to look good for social media. We've got to look good for our friends, our family. Like, no one wants to be vulnerable and honest with each other. So that's where it's,
For sharing.
Our next episode, guys, we have a guest coming, and he is my two sisters here are yet to meet him. No,
I've met him. Yeah,
Lovey's met him.
I've been to his event.
But when I first had the idea of a podcast, he is literally the first guy that I thought of as a guest speaker, and I'm excited because you guys can pick his brains. I always pick his brains, and just excited for him to share and talk about. He'll be talking mostly on like mental health, but we'll touch about breaking Tapu and everything about that. So we're excited for that. That's our next episode.
And also any links of support will be attached to this video, linked in the bio somewhere. But thank you so much. Thank you for being with us on this conversation and journey, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.